So fantasy football, it's definitely the kind of thing that I feel is intimidating to people that are just starting to get into it. I know when I started, fooling around with it, I was worried about, pretty much looking like an idiot to tell you the truth. And before I started doing fantasy football, I was a football fan, as in I would watch other teams besides the Raiders. And we've kind of broken that down before as far as, people say they're a football fan, but they're really a Bills fan or they're really a Raiders fan. Like, if you don't watch other teams, you're not a football fan. You're a, team fan, which is fine, but you're a team fan. Fantasy football, you can't get away with being a team fan and being successful. You need to be a football fan where you know what's going on with the other players, you know what's going on with the other teams. Often you might only have one player from the Bills or from the Raiders on your roster anyway in fantasy football, because it's not about promoting your team. It's about who do I need to win? Who's the best player to put in there and everything else. So I think one of the things about fantasy football that people find frustrating or find intimidating is, how am I going to keep track of all this? How do I keep track of all these players? How do I keep track of all these teams? Do I gotta watch every single game every week? Do I have the time for this? I think all those things kind of get in the way of starting fantasy football. I personally, I devote a lot of time to watching football. I'm fortunate enough that my wife is also a big football fan. So we will watch football all day together, and it's not an issue. I'll plan my week, getting the lawn done and all those kind of things. I plan it around the fact that Sunday I'm not going to be doing the lawn because I got football to watch. Mm-hmm. So for me, it makes the games that I might have not cared about as much, fantasy football makes them entertaining, just like gambling does too. I mean, we talk bets and stuff on this show all the time. As far as there might be a game I'm not interested at all, I put some money down on it. Now all of a sudden I'm hooked on this game, and fantasy football is a cheaper way to place those bets. I mean, your league might not have any fee. It might be a little $50 fee. It might be $100 fee, whatever it is. But it's still cheaper than gambling on every single one of these games every single week. So for the same reason that I like gambling, I like fantasy football. It pulls me into these games. It pulls me into the players. I find myself, working this as a hobby almost during the season.
So for me, fantasy football, I was a Bills fan first, and I had a couple friends talk about it, and I was like, oh, well, what is this? And you hear all these terms like Dynasty League, keepers, the different points and how they schedule PPR, non PPR, half PPR. And it was very hard to get into for me at first because I didn't really understand the nuances of it. But it made me a better football fan just because I couldn't just watch one game and call it. I had to watch the Monday night. I had to watch Monday night, Sunday night, and it got me more versed in how the league is and what's a good team versus a bad team. What makes a good fantasy player versus a good regular football player. And we deal with that a lot, and, a lot of people think that the best players out there, and most of the time they're correct, but we focus so much on the offense and we really don't notice the defense. Well, fantasy football made me understand half of it, and it got me interested enough to get into the second half of it and really start to love the game for what it is. Not just about points, but also about the game in general.
It does. It makes you learn the game more. You have to, and if you want to be successful in fantasy football, then you have to learn the game more. So for me, it did. It increased my enjoyment of football in general as a thing, for sure.
I think that when you talk about fantasy football, you talk about it in three eras, okay? When it first came out in the late 80s and people were getting on board and figuring out how much fun it could be, there was no internet, there was no cell phones, there was none of that. It was basically you had to keep your own stats, you had to use the USA Today, your league had to decide on, what newspaper they were going to use to score, because there may be some, differences in the Buffalo News compared to Cleveland or something like that.
Yeah,
So
tell me more about that era.
yeah, I mean, I'm serious. Like at that time, there was you would get a book, okay, and the book would have the players and like who they thought was going to be the sneaky one, or who they thought was going to be someone that was on the rise or someone that was going down. They had all that stuff back in the day, but it wasn't available to you on the internet like it is now, where you could just fire it up. And that would bring me to like the second stage, is when the internet popped, and when people started really using that and seeing how it could be beneficial for you for fantasy football. Look, when I was a kid, I watched every single game I could. I ate it up, college and pros. I loved it. The Bills were obviously my main focus, but that didn't stop me from, watching the 4 o'clock game, watching the Monday night games, like you said, James. And like, once the internet popped and you weren't like watching, do you guys remember the ticker that's on the bottom of the games and shows like that right there was be like, oh, okay, you'd go get your pen and you'd write it down. Oh, okay. I'm serious. That's the way that people used to be with fantasy football.
Yeah.
But again, when the internet came and you could start doing it on Yahoo and you could pick your players, and obviously, they would keep track of the draft and all that stuff. That was phase two, when people really jumped on, and that's when big money really started to get in. But when it all popped off is when it started going to these bad boys. Once the cell phone age took over and you could do your lineup from sitting on your ass in line at Burger King, I mean, you had it made. I mean, it was a perfect way to get yourself totally into it, and it would be at the palm of your hand. Now, there are guys that can read articles and get stats and not watch one football game and pick their team now and have a whole hell of a lot of success because they're doing their research. And just that in the past, that was never the case. You had to watch the games. You had to know what was good, and you had to know what you were looking for.
Well, I feel like the dedication that's required for fantasy football compared to any other fantasy sport out there, it's the perfect way to get involved with anything fantasy sports related, because it's once a week. I did fantasy hockey for a couple years. Every day you had to check to see if this guy was starting. Or, I mean, I've seen fantasy baseball, and it's insane.
Usually you do it a week in advance because of your pictures and stuff and goalies. But you're right. I mean, it's definitely nothing compared to football. Football is king when it comes to pretty much anything gambling. So, I mean, it's something that the sports world revolves around. And come September, every single TV ad you see, every single ad you see in the stadiums, you already know that it's going to be booze and gambling every single time.
Yeah, getting into fantasy football, as far as how you set it up, there's different ways that your league can be structured. So James, what are the 3 ways the league can be structured as far as the main 3 ways?
So you can go through a standard league, which is pretty much where you redraft everyone after every season. So blank slate, doesn't matter whether you won last year, whether you lost last year, didn't matter who you drafted, everyone starts fresh. The second
That's
is
the
keeper.
Classic, right, Jimbo?
Yes, classic. The next is the keeper, which is where you're allowed to keep a certain amount of players after the season ends to reuse next year, and there can be a term limit, etc. So, for instance, last year, if you took Christian McCaffrey and you want to keep him, then you can. That's part of your keeper league. And the last one is a dynasty, and this is the purest form of a long haul. And this is, I would say, the equivalency of almost like being a GM, because these are the stories you hear of where people have been. I've had a dynasty league for 10, 20 years, and you draft once at the very beginning for every player, and then after that, the only time you really draft anyone is for the rookie draft. You hold on to these players forever, and you make trades. It's permanent. Everything is set in stone forever until you change it. It's a commitment to the commitment, in my opinion.
Yeah, for me, I almost need to start fresh every season, because by the end of the season, I'm pissed off at everyone I drafted. I'm pissed off at like this year. I drafted Aaron Rodgers as my quarterback. Awesome. Perfect. Great. I'm glad I had him for 2 minutes. That was awesome.
2 minutes, that's a stretch, yeah.
Well,
it's just,
and
I get pissed at people.
I'll flip that coin for you. I years ago, I remember winning a fantasy league, and I drafted Rodgers very early in the draft. And I took a rookie by the name of Patrick Mahomes, who came in and did pretty well for himself. So I was able to trade Rodgers later in the season for, some obvious holes that I needed. And voila, I end up winning that league. So you're right, Pete. Like, there's a lot of times where you're taking a chance, and you got to get lucky. I mean, no matter if you're playing with your boys or if you're in the big ones in Vegas, that's the way it goes.
Well, the problem
And that's one of the things that I was told when my first going out with fantasy and trying to learn it. One of the pieces of advice that actually proved really true was everyone gets all caught up on their initial draft. By the end of the season, your team looks nothing like your initial draft. So for everyone that's all caught up on, I got to research this draft, the team that you draft is probably not the team that you're going to have at the end of the season. And I can promise you the team that you draft is not going to be the whole team that takes you to first place in your league. It's not possible. With all the injuries and everything else that goes on, your draft team is just your starting point.
Part of the fun is being a GM, making the moves, like getting in and trading with my buddy, like trading with Jimbo, trading with my dad, whoever it is. Like, that's part of, of the power trip of it, man. Like, you get to be the man, and it's super fun when you're in a group of your friends and, you got your chat rooms. Like, I think that's what really keeps it going, is that people love to communicate with their pals, and what a great way to do it is with fantasy football.
So the next portion is going to be about scoring trackers. There's something called a standard league and a PPR league. A standard league is based purely on yards. So, for instance, a running back has every 1 point is 5 yards, and 1 point is for every 10 yards receiving, and 6 points for every touchdown. Versus a PPR, which is points per reception, every additional catch is a point. So it's much more receptive towards receivers and the passing game than it is a standard run game, in my opinion, at least.
Sure. Well, no, I mean, it is. That's just the way it's set up.
And then you have, obviously, like my league is a half PPR league, so we sort of balance in the middle. And it only really covers quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, kicker, and then usually a defense. That's the standard format, and you'll find
that's the standard format. Yeah. I'm not a fan of the standard format. I'm in two leagues. I'm in one that I'm the commissioner of. We have a family league that family really close friends are in, and then I'm in a paid league that's a little bit more competitive. For who's winning and who's losing, and the punishments that occur when you're losing. Good. So I have two different leagues. The one that I'm in, that's my paid league, is that standard format. Our family league, we run it a little bit differently. We run two quarterbacks. We actually run 4 spots for a wide receiver, tight end, QB, whoever you want to put in there. We run 4 of those spots. We run a defensive player, which is really an interesting piece to put in there, because talk about research. You're looking at a specific player on the defense that you're going to draft, and then they're getting points for solo tackles, sacks, gained yards, points against them if the other team scores, points for them if you shut them out. Sure. So it brings a very big dynamic to it when you go with a defensive player. And then we also have a defense team. We got rid of the kicker. The defensive player allows a lot more fluctuation for points in the league than a kicker does. Most of your kickers are just kind of standard, unless they have a really, really amazing game or a really horrible game. They're just kind of, putting up the same kind of points. Whereas the defensive player, for one, you got a lot more options out there. You can vary that up a lot. There's a lot more to choose from. And it really impacts your total points that your team earns a lot more than a kicker. So we got rid of the kicker in my league, and then we opened up more of those open spots for whatever you want to put in there, because then you get a little bit more into skill that way. If you have the standard setup of you got to have your QB, your 2 running backs, your 2 wide receivers, your defense, and your kicker, that's your spot. you limit the creativity and you limit the skill of building a team. Whereas, I run the 2 quarterbacks, I run the 4 wide open spots. You got to know your stuff when you can put whoever you want in those spots. So it comes down to your research, and it comes
You just
down
like
to
more scoring.
who
That's
you
what it
think is
sounds
going to
like.
have a game. It's more scoring, but it also allows, to me, what it did is it sets it up better for, you don't have the same person that's going to get blown out all the time because, they drafted a team, they made a mistake in the draft, and now they're stuck with those guys, and the points are going to be the same every week. When you have that many open spots, you make it so even if they have a lot better quarterback than you do or a lot better wide receiver than you do, you got 4 spots that you can beat them on because they're going to do their picks, you're going to do your picks, and you can beat them on those spots.
I feel like, listen, I'm a PPR guy. I like the classic style. I like bringing the defensive player in and taking out the kicker. That would be cool, maybe to, mix it up a little bit. But when you start getting more players into your lineup, I just feel like, one, that's a way longer draft. It's going to be a longer night for you on draft night, which is typically the best night of the year. And you're just setting yourself up for, I don't know, I feel like part of the craft is picking the one guy that week that's playing against that one team that, he's had success against in the past, or taking that running back out because the Browns are really good against the run. Like, that's part of fantasy football that I love, that, it's chess match. You got to be, waiting a little ahead of time. And it sounds like in this game, you're playing chess with a lot of queens. And I don't know, I don't feel like it's as much fun to have so many people that can score points.
But it allows you, okay, the guy that grabs Mahomes as a quarterback, great, cool, insta win, great. If you have the open spots, it allows you to battle someone that has a Mahomes while you have a Trevor Lawrence. It allows you to battle that a little bit more. There's 3 quarterbacks in the league that are going to rack up all the points for quarterback. I mean, that's just the way it's going to go. So if you have
But
10,
Mahomes had
10
some
teams,
bad. Mahomes had some bad games last year when he got hurt in the
he gets
beginning of the
40
season.
points instead of 50 points. Oh no!
That's listen, I'm telling you, you can crack jokes all you want, but when he was hurt 2 years ago, he struggled. I mean, you're right. It allows for more of a balancing act with the guys that have the McCaffreys and have the Josh Allens. Yes, but at the end of the day, I mean, that's why you have the draft. That's why you pick first, and then you pick 14th and 15th. If you're snaking it, it depends on how it goes.
So I was trying to think about how I wanted to do this, and I thought we have to treat it just like we would a regular season. Let's going to start with the off season. So you're new into the league. You agree to the terms with playoffs, payouts, how much you're going to put down. G, you brought this up. I started to see this a lot more recently, the idea of last place punishments. And I've seen
You got to have them.
I've seen some crazy stuff, especially with social media.
There's some beauties.
The one was like being stuck in an IHOP for 24 hours, and every pancake you eat, it takes some time off. So you're just this poor guy over here just
I like that.
So
drowning in pancakes.
I'll tell you a great one. A local, in order to make into the bigger tournaments in golf, you have to go and qualify at local events, right? Mm-hmm. Last place in this guy's fantasy football league, the guy had to go and try and qualify. He was like a 30 handicap. He was terrible. He ended up shooting like 121, and while he's playing with these kids that are in college that are going to go play in the U.S. Open and stuff, like how embarrassing. I wouldn't even want to be in the league ever again.
Oof.
To me, you'd have to, depending on how big your punishment is for loss, you either need a low money investment so the person that lost isn't fuming about losing $200 and has to do this, or you have to have the perfect 10, 12 people that everybody can handle that. Because I could totally, in the league that I'm in that I pay for, it's like $100. So, $100 to gamble for the whole season, not bad at all. But I also gamble, so I don't mind spending $100. Some other people might. But some of these leagues that are out there, they're paying a lot more than $100 for their team. So to me, you'd have to weigh okay, you lost $600. how much can we add on to that to really mess with you. But I would rather pay less money and have it be fun. Like, as far as it's fun, whoever loses, it's fun to rag on them. It's fun. Like, we do things like the loser has to, serve all of his drinks all night, and they have to be like really happy about it. I'm so glad you asked me to get you this drink. Here's your drink. Stuff like that. They gotta be like really happy the whole time. There might be a certain prop that wiggles around that they have to have next to them at the table and stuff that the waitresses look at us a little bit differently for. We do like that fun stuff, not like a humiliating thing, but just like a ragging on you kind of thing. And to me, I think that's a big part of it. It also gives you some motivation, like because in a league you're going to have a mix of people. You're going to have the people that spend their entire day at work researching everything. You're going to have the person that's like, oh shoot, I forgot, I got to make a lineup today. So it gives you some reason at least to make that lineup, because you're thinking about at the end of all this, do I really want 9 guys ragging on me all night, so it gives you some motivation. I really like that part of it. I also like having the trophy for the winner too. The paid league that I'm in, it's a trophy, and there's, plaques for who's won, past times and all that kind of thing. And, you get to keep that all off season and into the next season and everything. So to me, that's a fun dynamic of fantasy football to bring to the table. But I also feel like that might be part of the intimidating thing to people who are worried about, should I start doing fantasy football because, I'm going to get last place and I'll be embarrassed and blah, blah, blah. Like, if you're feeling that way, you're not playing with the right group of people.
Right.
Because, to me, if you want to do just a straight, I care about money, there are those, you can get on and do fantasy for a night even and spend some money and gamble with it. Yeah. Yep. And you can do that if that's what you want to do. I like fantasy for the community and social aspect of it. I like, ragging on someone during the week because, they put a quarterback in that got injured or whatever else. I like that part of it. That's why
what it's
I
all
do
about.
it.
That's what it's all about.
But I like the idea
That's
of the
why I do
punishment
it.
because you got some people that they're like, oh, I'm 1-5, I'm just going to give up. And then really you're down a team all of a sudden. And it takes away from the integrity of it. It doesn't make it as challenging. You deal with some people that are like, oh, I'm not going to win, so I'm just going to bow out. And it just screws the whole dynamic of it.
And that happens all the time. You know that there's going to be 2 or 3 people that are, like G said, putting their lineup in last minute, forgetting that somebody's hurt, something like that. It's funny that you guys touched on this a little bit because, like G said, there is money to be made in fantasy. And I'm not just talking about the daily stuff. Out in Vegas, they have like $10,000 leagues, $100,000 leagues where you can't bring your computer, you can't bring your cell phone, you can't bring anything. You need to go there with nothing in your hand and you pick guys. So, you get into the 12th, 13th round and you don't have your players memorized. Guess what? You're going to have trouble fitting the team and getting the whole roster taken care of. And you're talking.
And it's not only your player memorized. Like, you can go into draft day with all the plan you want, but you can't go into draft day with, I'm going to get this quarterback and this wide receiver, because then you watch all your picks disappear before you and everything. So
you got to memorize it.
To do that would be crazy. It wouldn't be memorizing. You would have to know all the players. That way you're looking at it fresh slate, every single position. You know everyone you're looking at.
And the amount of pressure of having 10, 20 grand right on the table just like that.
Now listen, and I'm telling you this, and I believe it firmly, the Bills were so bad for 17 years. The only good thing that came out of it, awesome fantasy football players in this area. There are dudes that go out to Vegas and win those big things every single year. There are guys that are here and go and play in those and do very, very well for themselves. And I'm telling you, like, when your team is terrible, like ours was for so long, it was very easy for you to get interested in other teams
That's all
and
you
other
got.
players.
Yeah.
You got to be a winner somehow.
Yeah, exactly.
It's helped me. It's helped me get through the couple of seasons here with the Raiders. So it's helped me get through that for sure.
Exactly.
Even though I drafted Adams last season, if I'm like, I'll put a Raider on my team, nothing. Just did absolutely nothing. It almost makes watching that. I have like a rule where I don't ever bet on my own team for the same reason. So I will place bets on individual players on the team I'm playing. I'll put them on other games, but I never bet with my team because if I lose, I don't like the sting of I lost and I lost my bets. So I never bet with my team. That's my rule. I will bet. I'll never bet against my team, but I will bet on opposing quarterbacks playing us that day. I'll do those kind of things, but I don't put my bet on, Raiders win, blah blah blah, because I'm already ticked off enough. The time I stopped it was the Raiders Chiefs game when we lost 31-30, and I had money on the Raiders. And I'm yelling and screaming, we're going to win, we're going to win, I'm going to win my cash. And then not only did we lose to the Chiefs, but then I lost all the cash, and I had pretty good cash on that game. I lost all that too. That was the end of me betting on my team. After that, I said, nope, I'll bet quarterbacks, I'll bet whatever, but no.
Well, yeah, that's just a double slap in the face right there.
Yeah, I don't need it. The nice thing for me is at least I have the projector room downstairs, so the players are big enough that you can like point to them on the wall, and you can kind of pick them up, and you can really yell it. Like all my car days were me standing at the wall punching car on the wall with the projector. But I'm trying to get better this year.
Bought a lot of spackle and drywall, or?
Well, this time I have a white sheet. I have a white screen now that goes over the wall. So
yeah, he'll really
at least
feel it.
There won't be any like little scuff marks from knuckles on the paint or anything. So I'm trying to be a better person. Just try it.
I'll bet there'll be a remote control stuck in the wall by like week 6.
Who wants
Especially,
the over-under?
I have all this hope. I have all this hope this year. It's gonna be. We need to do well.
Yeah.
It's
Hope
gonna
is
be so
great.
bad.
Hope is a really good thing to have, especially as a Bills fan. I can tell you, the amount of hope that I have, it's great. I just used it all up during my youth. So,
this is your year.
so going back to the off season, the biggest thing I can say is just research. When to start is really just whenever you feel like you want to. You can start. I mean, the day after, the league is done for all you care. But my advice is always take a break. Remember, this is supposed to be fun. Unless you're dealing with 10, 20,000, then number one, you don't need to listen to us about fantasy football in any way, shape, or form. You're not a Matthew Berry.
See, if I'm going to do big money, I'll do short bets on a game, big
Yes.
money, opposed to big money on something that I'm going to have to stick with for an entire season. Like if you're going to
It's a
start
job at
dropping
that point.
hundreds or whatever else, do it on a quick bet. Don't mess up your entire season. Missing it's like Super Bowl. That's you put all this money down. That's a
Yep.
quick bet. At least you don't got to live with those choices the whole season.
There's
It's a job
horse
at that
races. There's horse races every single day of the week, boys. But guess what? The only time people really bet are during the Triple Crown. That's just pretty much the way it goes. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's some horse balls out there that are in the OTBs every single day, but for the most part, the only time you get people to come out is for those big time events.
And that's
So
the-
going into draft day, what's your strategy when you go into draft day? Let's talk some strategy. So for those people that are just thinking about getting into it, or maybe you just started looking for some hints, what should they be thinking coming into their draft party?
PC, I'll let you go first.
Oh, well, thanks, Jimbo. For me, it depends on where I'm drafting. Obviously, if I'm at the higher end, okay, and there's a guy that I really want to go get, I don't care what position he is, I'm going to take him. This year, I'd love to have Josh. I'm just going to say it. I think he's going to have a big year. There are guys that I would love to have if I was picking very early on. Now, people would take a shot at me saying, how could you take a quarterback so early and things like that. Look, it's just in my history of playing fantasy football and participating in it, I feel like quarterback has always been one of the most important positions, and it continues to be in the leagues that I play. PPR, you want to get your running backs, you want to get your wide receivers if you are later in the round. You have to, because once that snake comes back around and it's your turn, you either want to get a pair of them or you want to have one of each. So then when your pick comes around again, you can start making decisions on what moves you need to make. If I'm late if I'm late at the end, I'm definitely swinging for the fences for a position that's going to be, a number one. So again, that would be, if I'm down at the end, I know guys aren't going to be going for quarterbacks, so I'll take a shot. That's pretty much the way that I go. Wide receiver has certainly become probably the most important position in fantasy football because of the opportunity to pile up points, and not to mention the fact you got some great ones out there that are putting up huge numbers. I always shy away from the McCaffreys and the Marshall Falks and the guys that were, the number one fantasy guys. It was never my style. And honestly, I never really got to pick at the top of drafts for some reason.
you
I'm always
at least
dead
can't
in the
go
middle.
into plan with getting that guy because odds are that ain't going to happen. I mean,
Right.
if they happen to be available, great, grab them, but can't plan that.
And that's exactly what I'm talking about. I would never, if he's there and if it's the guy that I want, like I said, I'm going to take that shot. Other than that, I kind of feel out how the draft is going too. I kind of see, it's kind of a poker match when you get in the room with everybody and you're watching, and it's cool now too because obviously if you have it on your phone or you have it on your computer, they're taking guys off the board as they're getting picked, so they're ranking them. You can even go right to wide receivers and see what the ranks are. I love that. Like, that's something that I think has really made it a lot more fun during draft night. But at the same time, like Jimmy said, it's very important to do your research. You got to be ready to rock when you get in that room, and you got to have a game plan of how you're going to attack it. And like I said, for me, if I can get the guy I want early, I'll take it.
So for me, I sort of actually am a little bit of the opposite of that. I don't draft a QB usually until a little bit later into the draft. I mean, I was in a 10-person league last year, and I don't think I drafted a quarterback until round 7, actually. But I got the guys that I wanted.
Who was your quarterback that you picked 7th? Do you remember?
Oh, man.
No, you must have had a great year.
I had
came
Burrow
in
and
second.
Rodgers this year. I had
came in
Burrow
second.
and freaking Rodgers this year.
Well, I mean,
That ended great
yeah.
for you. What can you
no.
say?
And I won.
It ended
And I won my
quickly is
league.
what it did. Yeah.
I won the league I had him in too. By the way,
Well, let me ask you, who'd you pick up, G?
I was rocking Hurts and Lawrence. I was going back and forth with Hurts and Lawrence. Lawrence obviously started, kind of tanking there. Hurts was always good for points. For me, like I said, with the way that league is structured, I was able to make up for it with some great decisions on my open spots too. So when I was going against the Mahomes and I had Lawrence, who I knew is going to be 15 points behind Mahomes, I'm playing some key people in those open spots to make up for those points. So that's why I like those open spots.
Let's see. Trevor Lawrence and Matthew Stafford. Those were my two guys.
Okay.
And then
Wow.
I think I ended up...
You probably got second place because Lawrence was terrible coming down the stretch. He was
Yeah.
brutal.
And my
But-
first pick that year was Jamar Chase. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. I mean, that's, again, a prize wide receiver who
Yep.
lost his quarterback.
Yep.
So I'm sure the production was nowhere near what everybody had expected.
Nope.
I mean, look at the guys on the Jets that everybody thought was going to be dynamite last year. And as soon as Rodgers went down, boop, 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 all four of them did not produce nearly as the prediction had made. So that's kind of why, again, I really think the quarterback is crucial.
so for you guys, is there any website that you guys use or any person that you're like, I like this guy, I like the way he ranks people? Do you try and just go, this is who I had last year, this is who I like? Are there untouchables? Are there guys that are like, I need this guy on my team every year?
I shop around. Maybe it's the history major in me or something, but I love research. So I wouldn't just stick myself to one guy telling me what to do anyway, because I like the research of it.
For me, I
Jeez.
a full gamut of stuff. I got the eye test. I certainly like to listen to The Athletic. I got some friends that are on that site. I don't dive too deep into super research. I mean, you know who the guys are. I think the most important part is knowing who the other people around him are on his team. Is he going to get the touches? I'm looking at some of the wide receivers that Gabe Davis, who, 2 seasons ago was, supposed to be this out and exploding player. He just got picked up by Jacksonville, and he might be like the 4th option. So he's down near the bottom, or him and Lawrence hit it off and he ends up being a super duper star. Those are the types of things that win fantasy football leagues for people right there.
Yeah, you go to the websites and you listen to people that this is all they do all day is research these things and all that. And you know what? They're still wrong. It's like listening to a weather report where they say it's going to be sunny outside and it pours rain. So to me, going to one spot is not the best strategy. You should definitely check out multiple spots, especially if you find 2 or 3 sources that contradict each other quite a bit, because that way you get to kind of see the points for and against different things and all that. But I also feel that there's a lot of feeling that goes into choosing your players for that game. It's, looking out the window, I live, by Buffalo here, looking out the window and saying, hey, you know what? I was going to play, the Steelers guy, but, the weather's looking pretty good. And, Josh Allen does good in this and whatever else. So I got a good feeling about him. I'm going to put him in. I think that there's a lot of feeling that goes into it that you don't get with research. I think that research is a good point for you to start with, and then from there you make decisions. Now, if you are brand new to being a football fan, like my wife just started doing fantasy football with me last year in our family league. She was, really new to almost overwhelming amounts of players and all that kind of thing. She relied a lot on listening to what experts had to say. She would rely on that a lot, and then she'd make her decisions from there, because I made the rule with her that if she was going to be in the league, I'm not making her choices for her. If a trade offer comes in, I'm not going to help her with the trade. This is your team, and you got to run it, because I didn't think it was fair if I'm going to have my wife in the league that we're almost like a combined team if we're if I'm helping her and all that, so she plays her own team and I play my own team. So she got into a lot. I would come out of work because I can't have my phone at work, and my phone would be flooded with different things from her that she found. She's like, oh, look, he's good, he's injured, or blah, blah, blah. So she got really into looking up these players. And I remember we went over to her parents' house. Her dad's a huge football fan, but also a Bills fan. And we started talking, and she just all of a sudden started using terms, and he stops and he looks at her like he was like, I got to look from him like, I made him proud or something. I his daughter's talking football here. And she got really into it. So for those of you that are thinking about getting involved in this, like we were saying, but this will probably make you enjoy football even more. And guys, if you're looking for a way to, maybe get your girl more involved in it, or girls, if you're looking to get your guy more involved in it, I guess a fantasy football league, a friendly league with you and your family or something like that, is a great way to start getting that other person into watching this Minnesota and Browns game that you don't really care about, but getting them to watch that with you. You go on. I like Yahoo. That's who I like. You go on Yahoo. It's really not overwhelming to set up your own league. And not to mention they have, tons of YouTube videos, that help you along the way too. But you can set up a little family league in, 20 minutes maybe. It's really not a big deal. And like my family league, we don't pay anything. It's not like a pay to play thing. It's completely for fun. It's completely for just trash talking at family events. I mean, it makes family events interesting because we'll go over to her parents' house and we can talk about last week how my wife, beat her dad and that and everything. So that's why we do it. So if you're looking for a way to get, your wife or someone else more involved, think about doing a little fun, unintimidating family league with you and some friends and including her in on it. And I'm telling you, she's going to start, sitting down and watching those games with you or asking you questions about different players and all that kind of thing. It's really a great way to pull somebody in.
Feel like Twitter has also been a huge boost to allowing people to know what's going on in the league. You got your beat reporters that are reporting, to the minute on stories that are popping in the NFL. We got a great one in Buffalo, and Sal Capaccio, who does an awesome job letting everyone know what's going on. So, if a guy goes down in practice, you know about it within 2 minutes. That's just the way the world works now. And, when you're talking fantasy, and a guy twists his ankle on Monday, and you got to decide between him and some other schmo because that guy's playing Thursday night, it becomes very, very interesting. So, again, it's another wrinkle in, the whole, crux of the thing, just making it even more fun and another element to it that makes it even that much more interesting.
And speaking of injuries, because one of the things that confused my wife when she first started is, if they let just somebody rest at a practice, they have to mark them down as questionable or all that. So if you see, I had several players that they were literally questionable every single week. Crosby, they let Crosby chill out in between games a lot. So Crosby's questionable every week, and he's my defensive player that I like to use.
So is Josh. Josh was every week.
So is Josh. Burrow is another one. I know he's questionable all the time because they might not need that Wednesday practice. What they need to do is relax and take it easy. But the way that it's structured, you can't just say, "Hey, Burrow, take the day off." Chill. They mark him down as questionable. So when you're new to the league and you look at your roster and on Wednesday half your team has a little Q next to it for questionable, don't panic. That's where your research comes in. Figure out, did something actually happen? Did they, break a knee? Did they tear something? If you don't have those injury reports, they're just chilling for the day.
It's the same thing
don't panic.
with injuries and limited versus full participant. Because if you're a full participant, you play every single snap. If you miss one, you're already under limited. And that was part of the questionable thing too. And so now you got to start digging in. Well, was it 50%, or did they just were like, just rest after the second half of it? So many nuances to it. But,
and to me, that's probably most of your research, honestly, is keeping track of who's actually injured. What happened to them last game. If you're watching all these games, lots of times you can see what happened to them last game. But to me, there's almost more research into the injury part of this and deciding who you're going to play, opposed to getting online and saying, okay, I should play Josh Allen as my quarterback. It's more of, is Josh Allen, does he have a shoulder issue? Is he, going to be throwing a little bit slower than he should be, or, whatever else? Because those injuries completely change your season. You get these star players, especially if you draft them, and then they get injured. You're done. I had it happen last season with Rodgers and Burrow. They're done. They're off my roster now. I wasted my draft picks. That's that.
What's your guys' opinion about drafting players from your own team? Because, for instance, in my draft with all my friends in my league, I'll have
both of them.
All my friends are. Thank you. Appreciate the vote of confidence. But
your mom will still love you. It doesn't matter.
No, she didn't. I got adopted for a reason.
Your family league is like 3 people, isn't it? Your mom, your dad, and you. Is that what your family league is?
One of them's been gone since I've been born. So
him and his girl share the same team.
But when I go through the draft, I'll notice that Josh Allen goes major faster than I thought I would have. He would have gone way sooner than I would have picked him up. Same thing with last year, Stephon Diggs. Same thing with
those are those emotional picks, those
exactly.
Emotional draft picks. Yep.
Exactly. So for me, I usually am lucky if I end up with one Bills player, versus some friends are like 5 or 4 or 3.
I approach the draft as a fresh decision every single pick. So I come into the draft with a strategy of, do I want to target wide receivers first or running backs first or quarterbacks first? That's my strategy for draft. I don't have specific players in mind in my strategy. I have what areas am I going to target first? So on one league last year, just kind of knowing the people in it, I knew that everybody was going to be going for quarterbacks. So I targeted wide receivers first. Let them all fight for quarterbacks. Meanwhile, and it was Davante Adams, and that didn't work out for me. But meanwhile, I'll target wide receivers. So my draft in that league last year, I picked up both Diggs and Davante for wide receivers, which neither of them panned out last year. But if you think about it, I drafted 2 wide receivers that should have dominated the league because everyone else was going to be fighting over other spots. So for me, the strategy is what positions am I targeting? and then I'll analyze who's available in that position and make my decision about players there. That's my strategy for draft. I think specific player strategy is just going to frustrate you, and it's never going to work out. I don't care what your plan is, unless you are picking first in your draft. Then I suppose you could pick who's the player I'm going to draft. After that first pick, though, it's completely on the fly.
For me, though, I like to get the defense. I always grab the Bills defense, and in the McDermott era, they've been pretty solid in the regular season. So they've been able to help me out and win some games. Actually, I remember last year they had some great. The last game of the season helped me out. So I just know that coming down the stretch, it's something that I love this stuff. I just love looking. You said something there, G. You had two wide receivers that should have dominated. I didn't think Devontae Adams was going to dominate because I didn't think they had the quarterback that was going to get him the ball. And no matter how good that guy is, you always have to look at the other guys that are around him. And that's what I said. The quarterback is crucial when deciding what wide receiver you're going to use. And that's just the way that I rock, and that's the way that I've always done it.
Yeah, I think going in there with a player strategy doesn't work. Position strategy, I like that. And always look for those steals. There's going to be, at some point in your draft, someone's going to make a mistake, and you're going to have a very big move to make. And that might go against your strategy. It might have been your strategy that on your fourth pick, I'm getting a wide receiver, but all of a sudden there's a quarterback there that you really thought was going to be taken and no one taking it. Those are your big decisions during the draft. Do I abandon that strategy to grab this quarterback? I mean, the Raiders did that in the actual draft this year. They had a plan. They abandoned that plan and said, no, we're going to go tight end because he's awesome and he's available. Great, we'll take him. So I think that you need to have that freedom in your draft. And then, like I said, odds of you having, I'm going to say 60% of the guys that you drafted are the same guys you have at the end of the season is very low. If you're actually, well, I should say this, if you're winning your league, it's very low. If you're your bottom tier people, then it might stay the same. But you're going to be making change. You're going to be playing that wire and making changes on a weekly basis or a monthly basis. So the guys that you draft with, that's great. That's your initial pool, but it's not who you're going to carry. I'll even draft some guys that I'm planning on trading. So I might have a top quarterback. For me, I was going to be running Burrow and trade Rodgers this year. That's why I drafted both of them. So I'll play Burrow and I'll pick up Rodgers thinking that somebody's going to want him. And then, okay, I didn't get McCaffrey in the draft, but when he needs a quarterback, I'm going to trade Rodgers and try to make that work. So I'll even use my draft sometimes to build up who I'm going to be trading. Of course, that all falls apart when both of them, get injured, and that all falls apart. But that's another reason why you don't put everything in the draft, because it can fall apart that easy.
I guarantee you, everyone that won their league last year, if you talk to them right now and said, what was that one guy that you got late that got you over the hump, most of them would be able to say one or two guys that were responsible for that. And that's the key to winning in these things. And actually, you play with some ballers, you want to make sure that you get 3 or 4 picks that end up hitting that other people didn't anticipate happening.
And I think the best part about the draft is that it's the closest that we get to being GMs, to being people that can we're the scouts, we're the GMs, we're the people in the front office that are making the big decisions, because this is my team. This is how I would want my this is how I judge talent. And it sort of gives you that feeling of, oh, okay, like I could do this, and then you realize, oh crap, my entire roster and I'm in last place.
For those of you guys that are new to fantasy too, really pay attention when you're drafting or picking up players. Those bye weeks can really kill you. If you pick up 4 guys that all have a bye week on week 9, you are now screwed on week 9. And I think that that's a little detail. I know certainly that's what happened to my wife. I think it was like week 4 it happened to her. Like lots of her teams had, her players were on a bye for week 4. So she took a big hit. And in a league where you're racking up points and those points are deciding your place, a really bad game can really throw off your whole season, honestly. You have to really work to get back up there. So for those of you guys that are new, when you're looking at drafting players and you're looking at picking up players, really pay attention to that little detail of bye week. Don't get 2 quarterbacks that have the same bye week. That's not going to help you. Make sure your wide receivers, make sure you got a great wide receiver playing every game. So space out those bye weeks. You might pick up one, they got a bye week 5, and then your other one's got a bye week 7. Just don't pick up 2 wide receivers that are both bye week 5. Because you're going to find yourself in some problems.
Yeah, a lot of people jump on the strategy of getting a quarterback connected with a receiver. So, if you got Mahomes and Kelsey, that's great until you hit that bye week. And maybe that bye week, is week 12 when the playoffs are starting. So that happens to people quite a bit. You need to be strategic with any of those types of move and make sure that you got a quarterback in the hole and a wide receiver that can pick up the slack from one of your, top-notch guys.
Last thing I'll bring up is, just because we're talking about the snake draft, is there a preferred place you like to be in if you had the odds of it? I mean, for me, I don't like drafting number 1. I don't like drafting number 12 because I like to sort of be in the middle. I like to be between 3 and 5. That's my sweet spot. That's where I'm, okay, I can work with this, because I'm not drafting one guy and then waiting 23 more turns and then being able to pick my next 2. I can actually make a little more strategy around it.
For me, I don't have a draw to be first. That's because I don't do a player strategy for the draft. Mm-hmm. I do a gameplay strategy. So for me, picking first doesn't really matter to me because I'm not targeting a specific player anyway. If you are going to target a specific player, then obviously going first is key. But like you said, then you got that wait period, and there's a lot of damage that can happen. Like draft gets intense when you got a guy in your queue and you're like, no one's gonna think about this guy. I got him, and then all of a sudden you just watch him just disappear out of your queue because somebody picked him up. So I could see wanting that first spot just because at least for one pick, there's no competition, there's no contention. You can pick any player in the league you want. He's on your team. I can see that. For me, because of my belief, and as I've proven in both of my leagues, that the draft doesn't matter nearly as much as you think it does. I don't need that number 1 spot because I'm not playing my whole season on my draft. I'm playing my season on those trades that I'm making week 4 when people are lost their best guy, and I picked up a guy that everyone laughed at, but you know what? He's coming up with points every single game. That's how I like to play. So spot 1 doesn't really matter. Spot like 4, spot 5, that's kind of a good spot because you got a lot of options open. Also, hanging back a little bit in the draft allows you to start seeing some other people's strategies too. So did everybody go quarterback before you? If you're number 5, did all 4 go quarterback? Is that what we're going to do now? Is everyone going quarterback? Is it everyone going wide receivers? Is it mixed up? It lets you kind of see where your opponent's head is at as far as how are they looking to get their points. Everybody, if you go online, you can look up everyone's strategy for this is what I follow draft. I always draft, quarterbacks are always, 6th and wide receivers are always 1st and, all that kind of thing. So if you want to borrow somebody's strategy, there are plenty out there for you to grab. I just feel like to be successful in the draft, you have a basic strategy and then you build on from there. The more specific you make a plan, the higher risk of failure that plan has. So that's how I like to do it. So I like, 5th, 6th, something like that.
I'm aggressive. I would love the first pick always, and then it gives me an opportunity to possibly trade it too. Kind of talked about this a little bit when we were going over it. Yeah, I'll lay back and see what's going on, and I like to make some moves, but ultimately if I was to get the first pick and someone offered me a decent trade for it, where I'm going to get some more capital, I'm going to take advantage of it. And a lot of times, guys that want that first pick who are down at the bottom of the draft will give you their 2 down there at the bottom, and then you're going to have basically 3 early on. So I don't know. I feel like because I'm such a quarterback-driven guy in this scenario, it allows me to be really aggressive. Now, if Justin Jefferson is there, I'm going to go after him. There are some other guys that I may be interested in, but it's him and Josh, as far as I'm concerned, for fantasy football this year. And those 2 guys, I would love to see, my train roll through it for sure.
For those who also, for those of you guys that are new to this, or maybe haven't been as successful, that waiver wire is where your entire season is made. You're going to be playing that waiver wire, looking at that waiver wire multiple times in a week. If you're driven that you want to win. I mean, everyone, like I said, people play fantasy football differently. Some people, they just want to sit back and chill. That's fine. But if you want to be aggressive about this, you're rocking that waiver wire every week. The thing that I don't like about my paid league is you actually have to pay for all of your waiver pickups. So every time that you pick up a waiver, you actually get charged or billed that amount of money. So they try to actually limit your waiver play by charging you every time you make a waiver trade. So if you think about a league that you don't get charged for that, you can really rack up some cash. You get like your first 2 waivers are free, and then after that it's like $5 or $10 every time you make a waiver trade. So it can add up. And
That's
if you want to
fun.
win, you're doing them all the time.
That's fun.
Yeah.
A little more gravy in there. That's real fun.
I guess. For me, I was really disgruntled about it this year because the person that the 3 of us all know that was running my money league that we used to work with failed to, hopefully he's listening, failed to tell me that I was being billed for waivers. So when I was racking up multiple waivers in a week, nobody told me that at the end of the season, I was going to have the treasurer send me a bill for my progress.
I hope you got a collections call.
So I had to pay more money than I thought I was going to have to pay for this league at the end of the season. When all of a sudden I got, I might have had a couple of things to say. I might have started to ask if they were going to also charge me to use the internet per minute for being on the app, and I might have gone downhill on that. But
You and your snarky attitude? Oh, come now.
it was a big surprise to get hit with. So now I know for this year that every time I'm doing the strategy to win, I'll be billed for that.
Read the fine
That
print.
now I know. I guess
They start
So for
garnishing
them-
your wages too? Or...
For them, the draft is like more important to them because since they get charged for waivers, like their draft is their free chance to pick up these players. After that, they're paying to pick up players.
Yeah.
But I'm sure I'll have another bill this year because it's just the whole enjoyment of fantasy football is rocking that waiver wire. So I guess I just got to pay more to enjoy myself.
Did they charge you interest too?
Listen, I paid him when I didn't say I didn't pay him. I paid him when he asked me for it. I just made them also pay because they had to listen to me. So I felt honestly that my rants, I feel like I kind of got my money back with the rants. I feel like it was an even trade.
Yeah, keep telling yourself
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Crab in a bucket syndrome is a great mentality to have.
And I was a really big hit at the dinner, too, when I was the new guy proposing the rule that they've had for like 15 years about waivers. When I was the new guy proposing that we get rid of that rule, I was a really big hit at the dinner.
Viva la revolution. Great. So you finish the draft. You have your all-star team that apparently you're like, oh, this is great, or I'm screwed. How do you establish your dominance, or how do you sort of turn it around? And I think the best way is the way you described it, of using the waiver wire. that was my lifesaver, especially when I had 2, 3 guys go down in a week, and I'm like, oh crap, I'm screwed. And they sort of helped me at least salvage my weeks for about 4 or 5 weeks. I mean, because let's face it, players get hurt. I had DJ Moore last year, perfect example. Guy scored 45 points one week, 2 points the next week, 5 points the week after, 38 points the week after that. I just couldn't deal with that. It was like a stock. So I finally had to look for other means of getting my points, and I had to look at the waiver wire, and that was my best way of doing it.
Well, DJ Moore was probably pretty easy to trade too, and I'm sure you got some nice juice for that.
Yeah, I can't remember what I traded him for, but I definitely got enough to
You
get
better
me to-
start remembering, because when I ask you questions, I want to know the answers from here on in there, Slick.
Yes, sir, officer.
And with trading early is your best bet. Trade before this guy has, lit up, you trying to pick up a quarterback or pick up a tight end, that's been lighting it up for 4 weeks straight. That trade is going to be a lot harder. So if you didn't get that guy you wanted in the draft, try to trade for him early before he's proven himself. And I mean, it's a gamble, but it's your best bet to make that trade happen. Like for me, I picked up Kittle last year, picked him up early. People didn't want him. Kittle was awesome for me. I mean, he had a couple bad games, but he was awesome for me. And I picked him up early. And the person that I traded for was nowhere near, Kittle. It was a steal of a trade. But you're able to do those steals early. You're not going to get those steals later when, Kittle's been racking up 15, 20 points a game, and now you want to, trade Gabe Davis who gets 5 points a game. They're not going to take that. So trading early is another strategy. There's risk involved, obviously, but if you don't get that draft, after the draft, look at who everybody has. Go through that report of who everybody has and start thinking about week one. What are some trades that you'd like to do and try to make those happen? Moving into playoffs. So if you make it to the playoffs, it kind of changes up for the playoffs. For anyone that's made the play, I mean, in actual football, it changes up for the playoffs as well, as Bills fans would know. So you have to pay attention to how your league is now going to change that you've made it here. So what are some strategies for playoffs?
So for me, playoffs, I sort of look at it like, who can I get last second? I look 2, 3 weeks ahead saying, okay, I'm short in this department. Like last year I was stacked with injuries, and I just needed to last long enough to get through the playoffs, and most likely my guys would come back. I ended up trading for an injured Justin Jefferson. That's who I got. But it was one of those I gotta wait and see kind of trades. So I had to hopefully have just enough to last me, because I think I was in second place at the time. And when the playoffs came, I'm saying, okay, I have Justin Jefferson that's limited now. Is this the best option for me, or do I have to have him wait another week? Because now this is the playoffs. It's ride or die moments. And it's very high stakes at this point, because one mistake, and let's face it, you're done.
I think it's crucial to look at the schedule too. You want to make sure that you don't have guys that are having buys late in the season. I remember the Bills had a bye late a couple of years ago, and I had Josh, and I couldn't use him for one of the games, and it hurt. So you got to be very, very well aware of that. And also, let's say your team's got a bye week 11. That means that your players are going to be getting some rest. So maybe that's the type of things that I often look at too. But as far as strategy goes, you got to roll with what's been working all season. You can't, I remember years ago, Jimmy, you'll remember this guy. Lee Evans was a guy who played for the Bills, and in his rookie season, he had an awesome stretch at the end, and he lit it up, and he ended up getting paid for it. But I picked him up later in the season, and it helped me to go on and win. that stuff doesn't happen all the time. But guys that end up winning will have stories about how they snag someone late and then ended up helping them get to the finish line. But at the end of the day, you still have to be solid in all those positions in order for you to move on in the playoffs, because chances are you're going to be playing against a guy who's stacked up just as well against you. I mean, there's so many good quarterbacks and receivers in this league now that the guys that grab the good ones that stay healthy are going to end up battling each other when it comes to December. We all know that, and that's what makes it great.
And fantasy football, reflects, real football as far as injuries really come into play when you make playoffs with fantasy football, because, the guys that got you here, you're talking late season now, a lot, injuries start going up, so those same guys that got you to the playoff, they might be sitting the bench for the playoffs, and you're not going to be able to use them. So having that deep bench right before the playoffs is a good idea. For me, I dump a lot of players right before the playoffs, and then apparently spend a lot of money on the waiver wire after that, and pick up a whole bunch of new people that are not injured that I know are going to get me those points, because you can have a team that dominated all season, but now whoever Burrow is hurt now, or now Hurts, Jalen Hurts or Mahomes is out or whatever else, and now it's a new game because you were getting 40 points from that guy, but now he's injured. So what are you going to do? So planning out that playoff strategy and building up that bench is really important. You have to keep track of those injuries.
There's another factor you got to throw in there too. Let's say, your team locks up a playoff spot in week 15, and you want to keep your guys healthy going into the playoffs. And I'm not talking fantasy. I'm talking about, the Bills are 13-2 and they wrap up the East and they've got home field advantage. What's the point of sending your stars out there if you've already got everything rocking and rolling? I get, that guys are going to continue to get reps and get a good look, but that a guy like McDermott's going to sit dudes that are hurt down, and so would Andy Reid, so would any coach. So that's something that you got to also, as the season's going on, and you have a team that's 9-1 going into December, you're going to have to say to yourself, hey man, I might need to get somebody else to fill in if they sit this guy down come January.
Luckily, neither of our teams seem to have that problem lately. So both of our teams are fighting for something. At least your guys made it to the playoffs this time, but unfortunately neither of us have that situation.
Well, I mean, we were the 2 seed a couple years ago, and we rolled into Kansas City and lost the AFC Championship game. But
you guys lost to Kansas City? I didn't know that. Oh.
Which one?
There we go.
Here we go. I'm telling you, I feel like Bills fans are maybe just under Raiders fans at this point with hatred for Kansas City. They're like the hatred, like it's not even in your division, but you're like just under Raiders fans at this point
because
for hatred
they're the
towards
monkey
Kansas
on our
City.
back every freaking time.
Yeah, but
I think it's more like the dragon you can't slay than the monkey on your back, to tell you the truth. But yeah, we beat them. Just to throw that out there.
we beat them too, but the regular season don't mean shit. I think we beat them 2 or 3 regular seasons in a row.
Who do you think is Bill's number one rival at this point? Are we back
Miami.
to Dolphins? We're still
Miami.
on Dolphins. Yeah.
No doubt.
Only because Dolphins are good now. If Dolphins were a horrible team, I don't know if that rivalry would be as big as it is. But because they've been doing so well, then it was kind of nice to see that rivalry, kind of grow up again. Because like when back when I was a kid, that was a huge thing. Dolphins, Bills, and it seemed like it died down there as far as that contention. But now both teams are good, and that rivalry's back.
Well, I mean, let's face it, last year with us literally stealing that spot right at the very end from them, I mean, that was icing on the cake as a Bills fan, and if you are a Dolphins fan, you are ruminating on it.
They've beat us twice out of the last 14 or 12 times we played them. I mean, it's a rivalry because, like you said, G, we're both kind of at the same level. We haven't gotten over the Chiefs yet, and until that happens, we're going to have to settle it. And also, I got to say this. If it's your rival, it's probably going to have to be somebody in your division. I mean, that's just that's the way it goes.
That's why I find the Kansas City and Bills thing so entertaining, is because obviously for Raiders, it's a huge divisional rival that goes back and back and back. But Kansas City is not in your division. But any Bills fan seems to hate Kansas City just as much as any Raiders fan does at this point. So
Well, they're in our way, and they will continue to be until we knock them off. And don't forget, the AFL, the Raiders, the Bills, the Chargers, the Chiefs, they were all in the same league, and they beat the shit out of each other for a long time. And those are, wounds that go way back. And when Pops was on here and he was talking about it, he hated the Raiders. He didn't talk about it too much because he wanted to show respect to you. I'll tell you to take a shit for yourself because I hate them. And I hate them coming into our stadium, but now more than ever, the reason why I hate the Raiders, and no disrespect to you because you are a huge bandwagon jumper, but most Raiders fans are huge bandwagon jumpers, but the Chiefs have overtaken that with the winning and the Taylor Swift and all that crap. So I don't consider them my rival. I just hate their guts, just like you do.
back when I was growing up, it was the Cowboys bandwagon.
Sure.
People that didn't even know what a football was had that stupid silver star jacket,
the star
that
everywhere,
star jacket and crap,
the star hat.
Yeah. That and we were talking about it for basketball, the Hornets, for whatever reason when I was growing up. That was the other big thing, the big green and purple Hornets jackets and everything.
Green
that
and purple. And baby blue or
Whatever.
teal
Purple
we could
and
go
blue.
with.
It's
The reason
basketball.
why people
Nobody cares.
and the reason why people
No one
like
cares.
that is because those logos, those classic logos were sweet. And you can say whatever you want. Charlotte's old logo was awesome. And they had some pretty good players on that team back then.
Yeah, if only they could actually touch each other during a game and have some contact like real men playing a sport. Then we could have something. But,
Watch the Olympics, buddy. We'll see what happens then.
You mean the place where they used to wrestle naked?
Hey, you're the one that wants them to touch each other.
I want to see some contact in a sport here. Oh no, I fell down. Oh no,
There is some Sally stuff going on, but I promise you in the Olympics you're going to see a different breed of basketball if you watch.
You go watch it now, G.
I'm glad we don't do a basketball podcast. We would have lost a lot of people by now. Basketball or soccer, take your pick. It's the same. It's the same kind of thing. It's the same thing. Thank you guys for joining us. As always, give us a like, subscribe, hit the thumbs up, whatever you got to do. Let us know that you're enjoying the show. We like to check those people out and see who's giving us the thumbs up. We love to hear your comments. If you see us out and about, let us know what you think of the show. Always looking to get better and better. Hope that you enjoyed this episode. We're coming up on our regular season show now. So we're going to be talking about the games. We're going to talk about bets, stories every week. So we'll be coming out with those weekly shows coming up.
Fantasy.
Fantasy, yep. That'll be the start of our season 2 for the podcast. The first preseason game will be the start of our season 2, so that'll be cool. I think we're going to be changing it to explicit channel too when we move to our weekly show, because I feel like it's easy to try to stay in some kind of control during the off season, but when we're talking about what the Bills happened to the Bills or something. During that week,
There'll be
there
some
might
swearing.
be some language.
There'll be some swearing.
I'm sure there won't be any for the Raiders because they're going to be undefeated, and they're going to make me very happy, and I'm not going to have any frustrating moments
I want you
whatsoever.
to save that clip that you just said.
I'm sure I'll be in complete control of my emotions.
Tailgate will be undefeated.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
So we'll be switching up a little bit.
Great job. Great job, Jimmy. Thanks for coming on today, too.
Thanks for
Thanks
coming
for
on.
having me on, guys. Appreciate it every time.
We'll be having more guests on during our regular season shows as well. See you, everybody. Welcome once again to the Bills and Bones podcast. I'm Gio. I'm here as always with my co-host PC. We started Bills and Bones to talk football for the fans with a focus on PC's team, the Buffalo Bills, and my team, the Las Vegas Raiders. This week we're joined once again by our guest Jimmy. We're going to be talking some fantasy football. So we're going to cover some of the ins and outs and ideas to help you be successful and hopefully give you what you need if you're on the fence about joining a league. This week's episode is brought to you by Fleeting Moments Photography. Fleeting Moments reminds you to take all the pictures you can before the divorce.
Classy.
Like that company. One of my faves.
I should have used them for my first one. Well, I might get a chance on the second one, I guess. Can't lose hope.
Keep working hard.
Always an optimist, you know?
Yeah. So the first thing I want to talk about on the whole Raiders thing is, see, because the Raiders like to do everything better than everybody, what we've done is we've taken tailgating and made it better. So now instead of being in a camper and jumping through a table, you can, for the low, low cost of $20,000, you can rent a cabin in the parking lot. So they're offering a premium tailgate space for home games at Allegiant. Like I said, it's $20,000. You can put 20 people in there. And if we look at some of what we have to offer here, it's pretty freaking impressive.
I mean, $1,000 a person to go and tailgate in a treehouse with air conditioning and booze. Is that what we're talking about here?
Yeah, here's
Look
the
at that thing.
outside. So that's what
Wow.
you're walking into. That's your tailgating experience. That's what you're walking up to.
So it's for 20 people. Like, can you invite more people in there? Like, how's that work?
I'm guessing you book it, you pay the money, and then you can fit up to 20 people in there. Which at 20,000, $1,000 a person, you got this going. It comes with amenities and all that as well.
Yeah,
People are going to do that instead of go to the game.
It honestly, it could get to that. It could get to that point. Let me see. I got
Honestly, pull up that picture again, really quick. The weirdest part about the whole thing is that they have a spiral staircase. I feel like that is going to lead to
Yeah.
terrible, terrible accidents.
Well, it certainly
The
wouldn't
spiral
Buffalo.
staircase?
That's all I got to say. There'd be guys doing super flies off that thing, so I'd be careful with the spiral staircase.
What could possibly go wrong?
I mean, if I spend 20,000 and my buddies are diving off of this thing, I'm gonna be freaking pissed.
I don't even know if they're
I
going to dive
see
off.
that.
I
That
just
could
see
be a
them
potential
rolling.
problem when you're drunk right there. That's where we're looking at that as the problem. All right.
It is
right.
the cartoonishly spiral
Hilarious.
staircase.
I mean, people
Yeah.
aren't going to try to sit on that rail and go all the way down. I know I would.
And for 20,000, if you look here, you get some water and some boxes of popcorn. So you're all set. You
I'm
got
wondering
it.
if
Those are the two things that I always have in my table.
what you got to bring your own booze,
Bottles of
or
water
how's that work?
and
That is
popcorn.
awesome.
Well, you know that they have after the 20,000. You know they have 12 different packages for everything else.
Sure,
But they got the little cornhole Raiders cornhole set up over here.
Didn't see
that's
those.
awesome.
Yeah, they got that all set up for you.
I just feel like
You
that
got,
people are going to
They got
invade
chairs.
that.
I like that. They got chairs. Chairs are very important.
My biggest question. So when I first saw this, my question is: does the 20,000 cover security? Like, am I going to have to
Right.
police this all the time? Because especially when people start drinking, they're all going to be wandering over here.
Oh yeah.
Sure. Why would
So
you
I
not
wonder
want
if I
people
get
to do that?
stadium security for that.
What about when one of your drunk buddies goes from the second story, falls over, and lands on the canopy onto the table?
I see it happening.
That's day
I've,
one.
I've seen
Day one.
similar things happen.
That's in a very less expensive venue.
But I think G's right. There's definitely going to be the 50 grand one where they got your own bartender and hot tub and all that kind of crazy stuff. You know that's going to be going down.
Definitely.
More box of popcorn too. Maybe some pop.
Well, they do have 3 grills right there. You could do a lot of damage with those bad boys. Get some seafood on one, get some ribs on the other, your chicken and steaks on the other one. And
That's not
have a
part
heck
of
of
the
a day.
20,000 plan. They have like $500 locks on those. That's for the $30,000 plan.
Oh, okay.
And you can bring your own stuff too. I'm willing to bet, because I'm guessing that the 20 grand is going to give you the actual building,
Sure.
but
Be fun. I'll say that.
it would be a lot of fun. You're gonna be hating to actually go leave that area to go to the game when you're done.
I don't know how much fun it would have been this week when it was 120 out there.
Well, I'm sure it's air conditioned in there. It's air.
It does say it's climate controlled.
Yeah. Wild.
So 1 second here. I got the actual walkthrough for you too here.
Oh, a little virtual reality, huh?
I aim to please, you know.
Only the finest for our listeners.
Only the finest, yeah.
In the NFL. Now they're raising it to another level with these state-of-the-art premium tailgate spots where you can enjoy the game both indoors and out. You've had the privilege to be around Allegiant Stadium on NFL game days. Chances are you've seen this.
Oh yeah.
And this.
Raider Nation, baby! Las Vegas!
And 3 wins.
Win, baby!
And have most definitely heard this. And now fans have
Good
a
job,
chance
honey.
to enhance
Look at
their
that
tailgate
thing.
experience even more. This upcoming season,
Oh, you get a
the team will be
football.
providing
See?
these brand new
It's worth
premium
it.
tailgate spaces
You know how many
located right
out-of-town
outside
team
That's your
fans
couch.
are going to come in there and buy those? And
Came from our fans.
All-inclusive packages for these tailgate spaces will start at $20,000 and
Start
up,
at.
depending on the game and event. That's right, 20 big ones. All 4 of these spaces will come with comfortable seating, an indoor air-conditioned space, and much more that will give fans an all-new game day experience.
It holds 20 people. You got flat screen TVs. You can come here early. You can
Oh,
watch
so you
all
can
the
watch
running
the game
games.
in there if you wanted.
And
Of course, that's what I said. Guys are not even going to go in the stadium.
Yeah.
All day, all morning, we do all the work for you. So you just show up, and we're ready to go. And we're ready to go and ready to.
Raiders Vice President of Premium Sales and Service, Panos.
Those weren't grills, Jimmy. Those were
will also be used for events
heaters.
like concerts and college football games. And with the
That'll
Raiders
be
having
fun.
some of the most in-demand tickets in the
Those
NFL,
M&Ms will be
Pappas
great in the
says
heat.
they want to make sure the Raiders tailgate experience lives up to its name.
It's the greatest tailgate fan base. It's the greatest stadium.
Wrong.
It's the greatest city. So let's do the greatest tailgate party.
Yeah,
he
okay,
said
buddy.
it. It's true.
Will be
Good
able
try.
to reserve one of these premium tailgate spots starting sometime next
Jimmy,
month.
is he
When I'm
related to you?
reporting outside Allegiant Stadium, I'm Johnny Resendez.
He's the much more successful version of me then.
I mean, he looks much happier than you usually do. So
Everyone
I
looks
just
much
didn't
more
know.
happier
Yeah,
than me.
Oh, he's really. You should talk to your cousin. He's making it.
I'm telling you right now, those are going to be huge when you have like the NCAA tournament there. Wait till the Super Bowl is there again. You know, like
Yeah.
think of the concerts and all the crazy stuff that goes
Well,
on
wait,
out there.
wait till casinos get into it for comp
yeah.
and stuff too.
Oh, I
you know what I
didn't think
mean?
of
Like
that.
that's a
Absolutely.
huge comp.
Well, I'll
item.
have one.
So
That'll be nice.
I swear to God, if you get into one of those at my stadium first, I'm gonna fucking lose it.
Whoa. For the children.
Does the trumpet player come with
I'm gonna lose it.
$20,000? That's all I'm saying. I want the trumpet player in the very
No,
beginning.
you're not allowed to go. you have to wait till I go, which is never gonna happen. So just give up on all your hopes and dreams, like
I
Jimmy.
will say this though, it's going to be West Coast,
It's easier than you
so
think, actually.
for most Sundays, you'll be able to watch games in that area and then go in the stadium. That'd be fun. That'd be wild.
And then for you guys, your stadium here.
Moving
as the
along.
initial plan. It won't be long. You're getting there. So I'm wondering what they're gonna do, like all in here and everything. Like there's a lot of opportunity for some really cool stuff in here.
Well, they're
That'll
going
be
to need
cool.
that parking for a little while too. I mean, it's going to be crazy the next
Well,
2
I mean,
years.
you have a lot of lawn space in your parking lot and stuff. You got a lot of lawn space all around here.
Yeah, I mean, and to be honest, all right, so up, like right where that arrow is now, that's where we come in, like off of Southwestern. There's like a little cut through, and like right where your hand is, there's a parking, someone's backyard, so we come right through there, so it's wild over there usually. So once this stuff gets all knocked down and that's all like crazy, they're going to have some type of path or something really cool that's cutting through to the other side. And obviously, you know, you're going to have huge commercial opportunities and big businesses that'll be along that strip. So
Maybe a $30,000 tailgate space.
never. The parking is going to be $100.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, you can bet. So, you know, the more people that are coming now are going to be walking. So you're going to need some paths and you're going to need some ways for people to get around there. you know, it's a huge space. There's a lot of room. They're going to be able to make some moves. So I'm really excited about it. And, you know, when I drove by the other day, swear to God, I try to go like once a month. And it's starting to look like a stadium.
Visiting
now,
the
man.
Holy Land.
It's
I'm
his
serious.
devotion. It's his pilgrimage.
Hey,
His
and
pilgrimage.
at first, it was kind of just like a big hole. But now you got everything around it's coming up. You should see the huge piles of dirt that they're taking away from there. It's amazing. So, really excited.
They're taking the players off there too. Wow,
Good try.
you liked it.
Yeah, it was a good one. Well, look, man.
Yeah,
I mean,
this is where you guys started, right here. This
Yep.
is this started.
Yeah.
Now this is before the guy fell into the hole there.
Oh, yeah.
You had
Yeah.
going on there. Yeah. Before,
No, I think he did that the night I was there. The only game I went to last year was Denver game, and that guy went into that hole that night.
Feed the pit.
Knucklehead. Yeah, that's right, Jimbo.
I'm also curious to see what's going to go on with this whole Sunday ticket package. I'm one of the people we've talked about before, but I'm one of
Yeah.
the people that have that package because if I'm going to watch Raiders games, I need that package, or else I can't watch them. And they lost the lawsuit. NFL ain't happy about it, but they did lose the lawsuit. They're awarded damages, all those kind of things. So it should be really interesting what they're going to do moving forward. The guess is that NFL is just going to charge the 32 teams, just bill them.
I was just going to say,
is the guess.
the question is, how is the NFL going to screw us? Exactly,
Yeah.
Peter. That is exactly what we're going to find out, and it'll probably come with more Peacock and cable and pay-per-view kind of stuff down the road. Imagine the Super Bowl being pay-per-view. Jesus.
I think that is completely in the realm of possibility. I don't even think it's that far away.
Yeah.
To tell you the truth, we're going to see, because I don't think this year, I don't think we're going to see like the NFL's final plan for what they're going to do, because they're kind of in, time wise, they're in a hurry. I think this off season, it's going to be interesting to see what they come up with involving the whole Sunday ticket and all that. Because right now
Right.
they don't really got time to do major changes, but give them the time during the season and off season, and it'll be interesting to see what they come up with.
I'll
Let them
bet
stew
you.
and they'll think of ways to recoup
Oh, that's
it.
exactly, Jimmy. I bet you they're going to pretend like, oh, we're going to take care of the fans this season, and this is a
take care
great
of us,
offer, and then they'll already know that they're going to stick it to us in 2025.
It's all part of the plan. Either way, they'll win. They'll get their money. Just depends how.
No doubt about it. And it's like they print money, so losing a lawsuit, okay, on to the next one. They're going to make their bread.
When you have something that's in the billions, and it's like, oh yeah, it's only 449 million per team. It's like only for some. It's like holy. Just a
Well, the
whole
problem
different
is the owners and the teams get a huge cut of that revenue from the TV stuff. So if the NFL is missing out and the teams aren't getting as much as they used to, guess who's going to get screwed? Us. And that's just the way it goes. And unfortunately, Bills fans are finally starting to find out about it, because we, for years, have been in the bottom 30 of tickets, just price. It was great. It was the best show in town. When I was going every game during, the 2000s and into the 2010s, I'm only paying like $75 a game. And it was amazing. You got to see it all. So things are going to change a lot with this new stadium for sure.
Mm-hmm.